Hi, welcome to our next section, creating our own GraphQL server. After we learned something about GraphQL in the first section, in this section we will set up a simple server on Apollo Launchpad, have some basic GraphQL server running on Express.js. We are going to use faked data for fast prototyping. Then we will use a locally running server requesting data from Trello per REST. Then we will create and will have an extended version of a server on top of GraphQL's backend development framework, Prisma. So finally, we will have a GraphQL backend for our board front-end web application. Let's start video using the built-in graphical for analyzing and verifying the schema. At this point, we will start with Launchpad. Launchpad or Apollo Launchpad is something like JS Fiddle, where we can add some code and share also some code and have a built-in environment for running these snippets. We will add the schema of our board and have GraphQL resolvers. But first, let's jump directly into Launchpad and check it out. As I said, Launchpad is a tool for sharing source code. So on the left side you see some code, some snippet here, and on the right side there's some kind of runtime environment. So it's a built-in graphical, so a client for our server we are creating. Here of course we can run some GraphQL requests. And what you also see here is that we have a new button, a save button, a download, which we will use later, and fork if you want to work on this example later. And forking is quite nice because there are already some sample paths which you can fork. Therefore, I just want to show you here in the docs link. So I just want to show you here that this is an open source project. And the interesting thing is on their page here, there are a bunch of different paths and links which you can directly use or extend by using the built-in fork mechanism. But let's jump back. Before we will start, we will also clean up the left side because there are a lot of extra documentation and comments which we don't need. So this is the new pad and I'm already started to clean up some stuff. You have here some comments we might already ignore at the moment. But first, let's get an idea about how this works. Basically, it's a JavaScript module which uses the make executable schema from GraphQL tools, which creates the schema, which also creates the operations to call any backend or anything where we can fetch any data from. In this example, this will be just a hello world, but will give us some idea. Therefore, just have a quick look about the blocks. Here we have a type def, which is something we had before when we defined the types in the first section, which are the basic parts of the GraphQL schema, of course. Then here we have a so-called resolver we will look into in a second. And here at the bottom there are some extra functions, but we don't use that. They are optional, so we can delete them here at the moment. The only thing is here we call this method with the type defs and the resolvers here. So let's have a quick look into the type defs first, which you see here, which is our basic minimal GraphQL schema. It only consists of this query type and the hello as a field or part of the query. And I didn't tell you at the moment that every time I'm changing something on the left side, it automatically reloads this query we have here in the GraphQL. And of course you already see that we have a result here, some hello world. And this extra extension here is not needed at the moment. It's just built into this Apollo Launchpad and can be used for some other stuff. when we look into this query type, then you can just imagine this is the root query, so the overall type, which we had normally when we use something like query. But as this is the default in the GraphQL standard, we can leave that out and still have the same query. And with hello here, we are referencing this hello field or property in this query type. So then we come to the next more interesting point here, the resolvers. They are actually creating the response, or they are the operations behind. On the query type here, we are referencing the hello, and hello is something which creates our new value, just returns something like hi. And here we go. So you already see it's quite practical to work with that because of this auto reloading, and also if I would have some error here. So you already see how easy it is to start with creating our own server, let's say. So, but to move on, I created already something. Here we go into a new path, and in this path I already injected our GraphQL schema we used in the first section. So there are these different types we defined. This moment we can ignore these extra annotations. So as you see already, I prepared some more stuff, and directly let's look into our query here, because we still have the hello, but as we already prepared a new schema, we can also look into the schema first and check it out. We don't have any extra schema explorer here, so that is missing, but we don't need it, but we can still use the schema auto reloading, which allows us also to have this syntax highlighting and all the other nice stuff. So, but now let's move on, and as you already see here, we have the board already prepared, not only as a type, but also as a new field in our query. And now, when I'm starting with this board here and running this query, we of course get additionally this hello world. So I can delete that at the moment, it's not interesting anymore. But we have here the board with its name. And that is something which resolves into a null result. So there's something missing, of course. At the moment we only had this hello resolver here, and of course we would also need something for resolving our board requests. And actually here we go. Then we now have a look into what's in there. So this resolver just returns a typical JavaScript object, which is the board. And as you see, I prepared the board here, and it just contains the name. This is something interestingly because GraphQL library already implemented the fallback, so that if there's no extra resolver but a field with the same name existing as we defined here, then it automatically gets used. So in this moment we resolved the name here to the name from the board. And now let's move on and also try to address the lists which we have here. So the first query, let me first reformat this a little bit. So here at the moment we are fetching the board with all its lists. So this will try to fetch not also the name but also the lists, of course. When I'm running this, I'm getting an error exactly here that we don't have any lists for some reason. And as you can read here, it states that we have a null object somewhere. So effectively we have the problem that the lists can't get resolved. So But of course you see here on the left side that I have this list attribute prepared. So after adding an explicit field called list, it just uses this data and fills up our result with the lists object we have in the board. That's quite practical, so we can actually add any information just into this board object and don't need to implement any extra resolvers. At this moment we already have cards and lists, so I would say let's also add the lists again. So therefore we can use the practical functionality of this auto-completion. I just press Ctrl space and have it here, the ID and the cards with its ID and name. And when I'm running this, I would have expected that it works, but somehow we didn't specify any ID in our sample data here on the left side. This ID field was missing, so we get this error here. On the other side, we could have also removed this ID attributes or adapt the setting here so that it's an optional field by removing the exclamation mark here, and also the isUnique marker is not needed. So now when I'm now adding the ID again here and running the query, as we can now see, it's just null and we don't get any error. I can also make this a little bit bigger for a moment so that it's easier to read. So we have also our full query here and query result, not only the name but also the list and its cards. So a whole tree structure which is represented in our query here. So after cleaning up and also saving the file, we found that it's quite easy to start with creating this simple server for serving our board with some example data. Even while this was quite nice,